What are we looking to see out of Utah against Southern Utah this Thursday? We're going to be talking about Utah's matchup against the T-Birds, and it's time to give final season predictions. Is Utah going to win it all in the Big 12? Are they going to go on a run in the college football playoff? That's what we're discussing on today's Locked On Utes.
You are Locked On Utes, your daily podcast on the Utah Utes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for making Locked On Utes your first listen every single day. We are available on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts, and we're part of the Locked On Podcast Network. If you are in the market for a second listen every day, make sure you guys check out Locked On Big 12 or Locked On College Football. More on that podcast in a moment. But today's episode of Locked On Utes is brought to you by our great friends at Game Time. You can download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege, all caps, no spaces, for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Again, download Game Time today. What time is it? Game Time. My name is JT Wistrcill, former intern inside the University of Utah Athletic Department. I can't believe we are only a day away from Utah taking on Southern Utah. It's going to be great to have football back, especially inside Rice-Eccles Stadium. This is usually the point in the week, for those of you who tuned in last season, where I have the host of the other Locked On show for whatever team Utah is playing on. Unfortunately, Utah, there isn't a Locked On Southern Utah, but we do have the voice of Southern Utah, Spencer McLaughlin, also host of Locked On College Football, kind enough to join me for this one. This will be your second time calling the Southern Utah versus Utah game, correct?
Indeed, yeah. I was the color guy, actually, last time this game happened at Rice-Eccles in 2022, and I'll be doing play-by-play on Thursday night, and I cannot wait to just have football. Just give me some football. I'm stoked about what Southern Utah can be this year, and we'll get into it, but football is here. That's all that matters.
It's incredibly exciting. Wasn't very exciting for Southern Utah last year. Last time you were on the call for that game, it was 73-7, but there's reason to think it could be a little more entertaining this year than maybe at points it was last year, even if it's going to be what it is, Utah versus Southern Utah. But first, let's talk about it from a Utah perspective, especially, Spencer, for you covering all of college football. For me, the thing I'm looking most to see is Cam Rising in a live game. Cam Rising hasn't been live because in the spring game, of course, you can't touch him. So he hasn't been live in a very long time. I expect him to look good. He's going to be out there playing, but I just want to make sure, like him, and I'll say Brant Keithy as well to a lesser extent, like everything just looks good, looks fine moving around. I'm not expecting him to run. The Utah, Kyle Whittingham even said in a press conference earlier this week, they're not going to be doing design runs for Cam, but just make sure he looks good, looks comfortable moving around. That's the biggest thing I'm looking to see in this game.
Yeah, I think for Cam Rising, it's a valid question to raise. How's he going to look when he really gets out there? I think it'd be a little more concerning if you're a Utah fan if he didn't have so many seasons of college football already under his belt. It won't be his first time in a game. It'll be his first time out there in a couple of years, sure. But it's not as if he, has only got one season of college football that he's actually played. He's played a lot of football games. I expect him to be the same version of Cam Rising that we saw in the last couple of years of the Pac-12, RIP, and I think that for Rising, it's a really, really beneficial thing to not have a world beater in your first game compared to the other games that Utah has on their schedule, though it's favorable altogether. But having an FCS opponent in week one, I think, is how most coaches, if they spoke frankly, would like to start the season so that they can kind of work out the kinks. And this is just a perfect example of that. Get Cam Rising acclimated to a game environment. Have him take a couple of hits, but not, need to overuse him. Last season, coming off the injury, if he'd gone into that Florida game and been coming off an entire year in which he didn't play, you'd be wondering, how much is he going to be able to run? How much will he trust that knee? How much? I don't think you're going to have any of those sorts of concerns. I think it's a good spot for Utah to be in.
Definitely feels that way. And kind of what you mentioned too, just shaking off the rust in general. That's the biggest thing for Cam Rising because it's been so long, but even the other guys and not just the guys who've been hurt, right? We haven't seen this offensive line play together this version of it. So get them, grow chemistry, a nice confidence boosting game there. See the other players throughout this Utah team who are getting in their new positions. The biggest thing I'm looking for is just to make sure that everything looks right for this Utah squad. And we do expect it to look that way against Southern Utah. But Spencer, you know the Thunderbirds better than anyone. What should we know about this Southern Utah team going into this game?
Well, they're playing in the United Athletic Conference, which last year was ranked as the third best FCS football conference in the country, behind the Big Sky and I think this. What was the other one? and the Missouri Valley. Missouri Valley and then the Big Sky, and then it was the UAC, which is where Southern Utah plays. And so they are in a highly competitive league. They were competitive last year, and they bring back most of their team. This is as high of expectations, I think, as you've had for a football team in Cedar City in quite a while. And certainly they've seen these sorts of expectations before. It's not brand new. It just hasn't been here in a little while. But Delane Fitzgerald has done a fantastic job with the program. He's 11-11 in 2 seasons for a program that, when he took it over, was coming off a 1-10 campaign. And that 1-10 team is just so far removed from Southern Utah's memory bank because of where they expect to be. You're getting a talented team with all conference players. You're getting a veteran team that has a lot of experience from last year's team. I think that I have really high hopes for the Southern Utah team. I think there's a lot of confidence internally and externally in the Thunderbirds. They're picked to finish third in the league this year, and that's a testament to the job that they've done over the last few seasons.
Yeah, and I think what excites me most about that is not being like, oh, that then Cam Rising might have some issues with that defense. No, but this is a nice challenge for Isaac Wilson. This is his first ever college game. So I like that. Hey, he's a 4-star. He should perform well. But this shouldn't be 73-7 like it was last time, where everyone that Utah put out on the field, that, like I said, this Southern Utah team is much better than that version was. So it's going to be a nice test for guys like Isaac Wilson, some of the backups, the other players too, play in their first live college football game against a team that, look, yes, Utah once again is obviously clearly better than, but can at least provide a good challenge when you're talking about Utah's second stringers. Would you agree with that, Spencer?
Yeah, I do. And, that 1-10 team isn't even the one that took the field in 2022, but that was still Delane Fitzgerald's first season at the helm. And the growth of the program over the last couple of years has been really noticeable. And, we've all seen these games, FBS, FCS bye games play out many a times before. And I don't think anyone is unrealistic about what the expectations are in this game. It can be a benefit, though, to play an FCS team that is at a higher level, because it gets you a little bit more ready. Like, if Utah shows up, I mean, even just a couple of years ago, JT, Utah was trailing in that game towards the end of the first quarter. It was
what? You're right.
It was a 7-0 Southern Utah lead, and then Utah turned it on. And that's the sort of team, if not an even better one, Utah should expect to go against. If you show up and don't bring your A game from the first quarter on, this team's got enough talent at a number of different positions to give you a punch in the mouth and make you think, wait a minute, what's happening here? This is supposed to be going a different way. So, I like this team. The quarterback situation is a fascinating one, to be sure, but the talent on this roster, the offensive and defensive lines, are going to be fantastic, among the best in the UAC this year, and I'm excited to get started.
Yeah, it sounds like it'll be a good warm-up game for Utah, and hopefully one they don't get punched in the mouth in early, but maybe they could. It'll lead to more fun radio call for you if it does play out that way.
Yeah, well, I know how I'd like the game to go. It's just you take a one snap at a time.
Yeah, absolutely the case. So it's going to be fun to watch the game play out itself. And we're going to get to more of the game tomorrow. I'll be doing some predictions on what I expect from not just Cam, but I do think Isaac Wilson will play a fair amount in this game. So we'll talk about that on tomorrow's show. But while we have Spencer on with Locked On College Football, I want to give my final season predictions for this Utah squad. Go game by game. Let's talk about if they're going to win not just the Big 12, but go on to make a run in the CFP. That's what we're going to be diving into on Locked On Utes in one moment. But first, we have to tell you about one of the sponsors of today's episode of Locked On Utes, our great friends at Game Time. Week 1 has finally arrived, and if you're fired up to get to some games, the perfect place to go for your ticketing needs is Game Time. Game Time has a new feature called Game Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Game Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Talk about a fantastic deal. And with Game Time, there are so many amazing features that allow you to maximize your ticketing experience, whether it's seats views before the game so you know what kind of a deal you're getting, their low price guarantee, event cancellation protection, even job loss protection. Game Time has got your back. And right now you can go over to Game Time and head over and get in on this fantastic offer by using the app and creating an account using that code Locked On College, capital L-O and C for college. The L is capitalized, the O is capitalized, and the C is capitalized, all one word, and just those few capitalizations for $20 off your first order. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. Also want to talk with you all about our great friends at FanDuel. You've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Well, we have something a little different for you. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then with YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out of market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel at any time. I mentioned college football is back, and there are tons of great games to bet on. And I'm talking about actual good games, not the one that's going to take place between Utah and Southern Utah coming up on Thursday night. How about West Virginia taking on Penn State? So many great matchups too. We get Notre Dame taking on Texas A&M, Miami versus Florida. However you're inkling and whatever you're leaning on, make sure you head over to FanDuel today, and you can even get rewarded with some Sunday NFL ticket options. You can just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon, capital LNO, and that's one word, Locked On, to download America's #1 sportsbook today. Alrighty, a few weeks ago, I was on Spencer's show, and we went through Utah's schedule game by game and gave our predictions. And I'm ready. Before I give mine, Spencer, can you remind me, were you 10-2 for Utah?
No, I'm 11-1. I'm on.
You are as well.
I'm on the 11-1 train. I think UCF last week of the regular season prevents Utah from going undefeated. I think their schedule is incredibly manageable by Big 12 standards. That doesn't mean every game is going to be easy. They have to go to Stillwater. They have to go to Boulder to play Colorado, and I think Utah will win the game. I don't think it's going to be a complete and total cakewalk. Last year was not as much as it should have been, but Colorado is a better team this year, and Utah will be a better team this year. So that one is capable at least of being competitive. I think the way their schedule works out, Cam Rising being there, the fact that it's maybe the last season for Kyle Whittingham inspires them to play a certain brand of football that, results in a lot of wins. And that's what Utah has kind of done anyway. So, I like the team. I like the head coach and the quarterback and the schedule. So I've got 11-1.
Yeah, the last time the schedule was this favorable with a roster this good, 2019. Only lost one game in the regular season, and that's very similar to what I feel like I'm going to end up rolling with as well.
I forgot.
How dare you, Locked On Ducks, my friend? Oh, that was sneaky. That was sneaky. That
was. I'm just gonna say I didn't bring up 2019. That was all. That was all you. That was all you.
You said rip Pac-12 earlier, so wouldn't this be a great year to watch Utah and Oregon go at it? Obviously, Ducks would be the favorite for the roster they've assembled, but I think
the Pac-12 was great last year, and it would have been great again this year too. I mean, you have USC and Washington. Jonathan Smith is probably still at Oregon State. Jed Fish is maybe still at Arizona. Maybe, I don't know. Kalen DeBoer probably goes to Alabama either way. But would have been a great conference. We'll never know.
No, unfortunately, we won't. But we're about to find out what we know about this Utah football team. So let's roll through the schedule game by game. We just hit on the Southern Utah one. Utah is going to beat the Thunderbirds. Then going into the Baylor game, look, they're just not on Utah's level. Offense has a lot of new pieces, including the MAC Player of the Year. I think got some potential, but the defense was a mess last year. I don't think they're ready to come out to Rice-Eccles Stadium and to lump one more game in here. Utah State, once again, just not on Utah's level, right? It's going to be fun to see Bryson Barnes. He's actually the backup right now to Spencer Petras, the Iowa transfer. They have a solid receiving core, but they're not going to be able to run the ball and protect long enough. Defense lost their best player from last year too and still struggled with them. They gave up 30 points 8 times last year, and I do think Utah starters will be out of this game by the fourth quarter.
Yeah, I'd expect them to start strong. Utah State, I love that they have the in-state matchup. I think that's great, playing both Southern Utah and Utah State in the same year. I'd like to commend the Utah Athletics Department for scheduling it that way. I think it's the way it should be. When you have those games where you're playing down, against a G5 or FCS opponent, you should have those in-state games. Southern Utah last year went to BYU in Provo. It was the first time they'd been up to LaVell Edwards Stadium since, I think, 2016 is the number, if my memory is correct. That just shouldn't happen. That just shouldn't happen. Oregon in their non-conference last year, they played Portland State. You know why? Because Portland State's right there. And there is something about the in-state matchups and the visibility you give those programs in your state. So I think that is a great thing for Utah to have. I'm with you on Baylor. It's interesting, to be sure. I don't have super high hopes. DeQuan Finn, that's his name. DeQuan Finn is the quarterback. He could be all right. I do like their offensive coordinator hire. I don't know about Baylor's weapons and their offensive line because I don't have high hopes for them this year, so I haven't really talked about him much on Locked On College Football. And it feels like this is the last year for Dave Aranda. If the season doesn't go well, it's going to be. However, I will offer this counterpoint. Everyone said the same thing about West Virginia last year with Neil Brown, and guess what? Neil Brown is still there because he surprised everyone and he won 9 games. That's essentially what Baylor is trying to do. So if they can fix things on the defensive side of the ball, maybe they could have enough juice. They do have a high level of returning production on both sides of the ball, which isn't necessarily a great thing because they weren't very good last year. But in theory, you'd think those guys with another year in that system on both sides would be able to improve and put up better numbers than they did last year. But are they on Utah's level? No, absolutely not. And in a non-conference game against Baylor, Utah rolls.
I agree. 3-0 for both of us. Feeling good about that. You mentioned a lot of guys returning, not always being a good thing. Let's talk about this Oklahoma State game. Easily the game that on Utah's schedule you look at and you go, okay, if you're looking for a loss, probably Oklahoma State. But I really like this matchup for Utah. This is a top 5 run defense. And I know Oklahoma State has Ollie Gordon, but I do think they'll be able to contain Ollie Gordon. And I think if you make Alan Bowman beat you, that's a recipe for success. And we saw that last year. Texas, several teams were able to do that. South Alabama and UCF included. And you mentioned returning starters about Baylor, but not producing. That's Oklahoma State. If you look at their secondary, 125th ranked pass defense, allowing 275 yards per game. They were 98th in rushing yards allowed per game, giving up 170 rushing yards. And you look at, there was games where they gave up they gave 441 yards per game last year, right? So this is an Oklahoma State team that has some massive holes on it last year that you can say, oh, well, these guys are returning, but they didn't produce to me too. So this is a game where Cam Rising really announces he's back. I think he's going to dice up this defense in Stillwater. I think this is the start of his, Big 12 Player of the Year, maybe a sleeper Heisman campaign, but I think he has a huge performance. I think Utah gets the win against Oklahoma State. It's a favorable matchup to me.
Yeah, I'm with you. I am not a fan of Oklahoma State. They're not terrible. They can't be under Mike Gundy. They're the Iowa football of the Big 12. Every now and then they'll flash up to a conference championship level. They'll just consistently be a 7-9 win team, and they're not, going to perform they don't have the ceiling. They have not demonstrated that they've got the ceiling, but they've got a head coach who we know is good, just isn't able to consistently have them at the level of great. So I am not high in Oklahoma State. The two, if Locked On College Football had existed at this time last year, the two takes that would have been sharpest for me nationally are Tennessee is not good and Oklahoma State is not good. Those are two of the most fraudulent teams throughout the course of the year. Tennessee ever being ranked was completely pathetic. after they got dog walked by actual teams in consecutive weeks, but they got a little SEC bump there, which I understand, but it went overboard there. And Oklahoma State, I never bought into Oklahoma State, and they made the Big 12 championship game. Yeah, by accident. They made it by accident. I get they beat Oklahoma. You get credit for that. That wasn't fluky or anything. They beat Oklahoma. It was a rivalry game. Good for you. What happened when you played a real team in Texas? What happened when you played an average team in UCF? What happened when you played South Alabama at home? Stillwater's usually a really tough place to play. And last year, this veteran team, and there's so many returns and whatnot. I'm like, yeah, a team that got blasted by a South Alabama and got dog walked by UCF. 50. Do you remember the score of that game, JT?
Was it 45-3? The UCF
55-3.
Game? Yeah.
55-3. And you're telling me that this team that has most of the same players, or a lot of the same players from last year, and Alan Bowman at quarterback is going to make a run at a Big 12 championship? No shot. Utah's a better team on paper. They're going to prove that on the field as well.
Absolutely agree with you there. And it doesn't get easy for Utah the next week because you welcome a really talented Arizona team at key positions. But their roster did take a hit. So are the Wildcats going to go into Rice-Eccles Stadium and get a win, or is Utah going to improve to 5-0? That's what we'll be discussing in one moment. Today's episode of Locked On Utes is also brought to you by our great friends at 5 Hour Energy. Want to get in shape but having trouble staying motivated? Make 5 Hour Energy shots part of your lifestyle and get the energy boost you need to get fit. We all know you sometimes do not want to go to the gym. You can take 5 Hour Energy shots to give you the feeling and alertness so you can get to the gym on time and get a great workout in. With zero sugar and a convenient portable size, it's the perfect pick-me-up for getting stuff done. The 5 Hour Energy website has flavors galore like watermelon, tropic burst, grape berry, and so many more flavors for everyone. You can even try them all. On the site, you have the option to build your own 12-pack or 24-pack. You can choose the flavors, and it's delivered right to your door. If you go to 5hourenergy.com, that is the number 5hourenergy.com, and get some 5 Hour Energy products today, you can use my promo code LOCKEDONCFB, all caps, one word, to receive $20 off your order. This offer is only valid until September 30th on one order and cannot be used with other promotions. The code is not good on subscriptions order. You can go to 5hourenergy.com and pick up some 5 Hour Energy today. Alrighty, moving on. I got Utah at 5-0. Let's talk about this Arizona game really quick. Look, Fafita McMillan might be the best quarterback, wide receiver connection in all of college football, but the truth is Coleman was a massive loss for them at running back. Offensive line, it's not the same. It's not as good as it was last year. Their secondary is pretty good, and linebackers too, but like the D line is just not as strong. They lost a lot of guys there. There were key departures this team suffered when Coach Fish went to Washington, and I believe those key departures are the difference between this team going in and winning in Utah. And I think even if it was there, it's really hard to win at Rice-Eccles Stadium. You are the podcast of the only team that's done it recently in the Oregon Ducks. So I just think this team is very good, but I've seen this story before where they have a really good quarterback who comes into Rice-Eccles Stadium and can't quite get it done. So I don't think Arizona's winning this game. I have Utah winning this game.
I do too, and I've seen teams much better than 2024 Arizona go into Rice-Eccles and lose. And you know, it might not be easy because they are going to have one of the 3 to 4 best quarterback wide receiver combos in the country. But Arizona, another team that a lot of people like, they're going to win the Big 12 this year. You mentioned some of the departures, and it's important to bring that up when talking about Arizona because I think people with a 30-foot view will look at T-Mac and Noah Fafita and say, well, they've got those two guys back. Like, yeah, but what else did they lose? This is a team that lost a linebacker, a corner. They do have a couple of good safeties. Like I think their secondary is still okay. They still lost a starting caliber corner, Pac-12 honorable mention guy in Ephesians Prysock. You've got Noah Fafita. You've got Tetairoa McMillan. You lost an NFL offensive lineman. You lost a really solid tight end. You lost your running back. You were much weaker along the defensive line. And oh, by the way, you didn't even mention the biggest question with this team. It's not the roster. It's the head coach. Okay, Brent Brennan did a great job at San Jose State. No doubt about it. Took him a while to start winning there because it's a hard place to win. But he's just going to come in year one and start running circles around the Big 12? In his first year, I have a hard time seeing that. That is a difficult feat to accomplish. Think about this, JT. Kalen DeBoer, one of the 3 best coaches in all of college football. First year at Washington. which if you did a 24/7 sports talent composite ranking and you factor in what we know now about Michael Penix at quarterback compared to Noah Fafita, Penix is better. They are both exceptional, of course. He lost to a 3-9 Arizona State team. It took him till his second year to have everything running at the highest level. This is not going to be the best version of Arizona Brent Brennan's capable of building. It might be the best one he has in a couple of years, depending on what happens at quarterback and whether Noah Fafita returns. T-Mac is going to be gone to the NFL. But Arizona with a new coach, like it is really, really tough for a first-year head coach in any situation to go out and win a conference championship. And I don't think that Brent Brennan has got that, so I like Utah over Arizona.
I agree. Let's roll through these next few. Arizona State, look, they're still rebuilding. We all like Scatterbo,
They're not there
right?
yet. They're going up, but they're not there yet.
I think Kenny Dillingham's a good head coach. I just think he was dealt a really rough hand with everything going on there.
Good takes.
TCU offense is full of solid players, but no one elite. The offensive line's a massive question to me. Only 2 returners up front with that group. They gave up 27 points per game last year, and they got some transfers, but we have no idea how that.
Their defense is going to be better. Andy Avalos comes in as their defensive coordinator. They're going to be better. They have got more talent than people realize. Josh Pate has dubbed them one of the most underrated rosters in all of college football. He could very well be right. The 24/7 sports talent composite has them a lot higher than you would probably think, and they're one of the best rosters. I think 24/7 might have had them as the most talented roster in the Big 12. That's overstating things. The point, I might have that wrong, but they're certainly up there, which is not where the season expectations and narrative surrounding TCU are. I think Sonny Dykes is a good coach. I think they have a bounce back sort of year. As long as Josh Hoover at quarterback is good enough, I think they'll improve on the defensive side of the ball. They were only 5-7 last year. It's not like they completely sucked. They just weren't good. But were they some 2-10 bottom dweller? No, they just had a massive regression year, which a lot of people saw coming, myself included. I thought they would win 7 games. Instead, they lost 7 games. I'd watch out for TCU. Utah, better. I think Utah wins the game. Watch out for TCU.
I would be more nervous going down there, as well as if there was something better than Hoover at quarterback, I think is why they don't scare me with how good Utah is. But
yeah, but Sonny Dykes has had a lot of success with a lot of different quarterbacks.
I agree. Honestly, I had a bunch of stats on why Utah is going to beat Houston, but should we just leave it at Utah's going to beat Houston?
Houston's the worst team in the Big 12 this year.
Yeah.
They play, by the way, think about this. They play UNLV at home week 1. UNLV, preseason number 2 team in the Mountain West. Houston's favored by 1.5.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Okay. Houston's gonna struggle this year. Willie Fritz could do fine. Houston's gonna be bad.
They were 100th or worse on every major statistical defensive category, and they had the worst rushing yards per game and rushing touchdowns in the country. So,
and by the way, new head coach. We were talking about new head coaches coming in there. They got gutted in the transfer portal.
Yes.
Yeah, they got gutted. Like they're gonna be bad.
Yeah, it'll be rough. Speaking of another team that may not be great this season, look, Utah versus BYU could very well be a really good game just because it's a rivalry. It's like Alabama-Auburn last year. That should not have been a good game, but Auburn made it crazy. Alabama needed something even crazier to come out on top. But when we just look at this team, BYU just released their QB depth chart. They have an or next to it. So they still don't even ready to name who their guy exactly is, right? You know, good receivers. O-line is still shaky. Defense struggled. The pass rush was dead last in sacks. There's just too much to rebuild to me. I feel confident that Utah is going to beat their rival, who got them last time in 21, but will not get them in 24.
No, they will not. Did not love what they did at the quarterback position in the offseason, and I don't think they have the roster to support below average quarterback play in the best quarterback conference in the country in the Big 12. So, yeah, whether this game is in Provo or Salt Lake City, I don't remember, and I don't care. Utah's winning.
I have Utah undefeated right now. Utah is currently 9-0 as I have them listed.
Yes.
Utah is going to be a really good team this year. They're not going to go undefeated. And I think pretty much every game on their schedule, they're going to be favored in. The Oklahoma State one is the only one to question. But what did I mention about the Oklahoma State game? It's about the matchup, which is why I have a crazy prediction for this next game of where Utah is actually going to suffer their loss. If you look back to last year, Colorado almost beat Arizona when Arizona was rolling. What does Colorado have? an elite quarterback. 27-3 was the touchdown to interception ratio for Shedeur Sanders. You can say what you want about him, but he is
behind the worst offensive line in college football at the Power 4 level.
Who should be in that offensive line should be improved, because what did they also do? They got one of those offensive linemen from Houston to come up and join them.
I don't know if they're great at the offensive line. I think they're better, at least.
They're better. And I think that matchup, look, I think Utah has really good defensive backs, just like I thought they did against Oregon. But so often, Bo Nix was just making the better throw, the better play. That's what it takes to beat this Utah defense. That's what Shedeur Sanders is going to do. This is going to be a shootout in Boulder. And I think that Shedeur Sanders has a performance similar to what Anthony Richardson had. Obviously, very different style of performance, but just the one like come draft season where, like, remember Anthony Richardson against Utah? I think this will be Shedeur's remember Shedeur against Utah game. I think he's going to ball. Travis Hunter will be great. And I think this is the surprise loss. Coach Prime gets his big win, and it comes over Utah. That's my bold take for where Utah's loss comes in the regular season.
I can see it. I really can, because Colorado's an improved team, and I think they're a bowl team this year. And bowl teams at home, they can beat upper tier conference title contenders. Like, that's happened many a times before. Heck, teams worse than non-bowl teams have beaten conference title contenders at home before. So, yeah, I don't think it's the most insane pick. There's plenty of noise and buzz, and Deion Sanders banning reporters, which is dumb. But it's just like, if you block all of that out and look at Colorado in a vacuum, this is what they are. A quarterback that had a 27-3 touchdown interception ratio behind the worst offensive line I've seen at the Power 4 level in the last decade. A defensive line that was giving up 2nd and 21 first down carries against Oregon last year. They could not stop a nosebleed on the ground when their defense was struggling. They have, by any objective metric, and you look at the players they brought into the portal on both sides, they're going to be better. They're not a Big 12 title contender. They're a better team. Great quarterback, really good weapons, better offensive line, better defensive line. Addressed weaknesses and returned strengths. That's a better football team for a coach's second year. So I don't think it's crazy. I think Utah will find a way to win that football game in Boulder. It might not be pretty, but I think they will do it. It'll be a great quarterback battle with Cam Rising and Shedeur. But I think they lose last week of the season against UCF. That's my loss. But then I have them going on to the Big 12 championship game, winning that against Kansas, and going to the playoff.
Well, let me catch up with you on prediction-wise there. Next, Utah will take on Iowa State. Look, this Iowa State team's really good. If Utah had to go to the Cyclones, I'd be nervous. You look at Rocco Beck.
Yep.
You know, they struggle to generate a pass rush, but outside of that, the skill position players, offensive line is strong. So I think that will be a game, but I do think Utah will end up winning that one by a touchdown or more in Rice-Eccles Stadium. It's nice to get them at home. UCF game, look, this is originally where I had Utah at one point losing to Oklahoma State. At one point this offseason, I had them losing to UCF. At the end of the day, this is what I come to. A week before the Big 12 title's on the line, I don't think Utah lets this opportunity slip through their fingers to take care of business and solidify their position there. Now, Spencer, if you had them 11-0, maybe that's when they slip up there because they know they're already in it. But in my scenario, they don't want to become a 2-loss team. They take care of business. Jefferson and Harvey, they're tough. I'm not saying they're not, but this team's not up to Utah's level in the trenches. That defense has a lot of makeshift pieces on it. So I do have Utah beating UCF. I have Utah as 11-1. That's my official prediction, and time to pour a little bit extra on it. I do have Utah making and winning the Big 12 title game. They will run into Kansas State, in my opinion. This is a Utah team that will get pressure and overwhelm Avery Johnson in that game. A couple of turnovers by the young quarterback who's gaining more experience quickly will end up being the difference. I have Utah as the Big 12 champs. And Spencer, to pour on some extra boldness to close this one off, Utah will get a bye in the college football playoff. That's not bold. When you win your conference, that happens. Utah will be one of the last 4 teams standing. Whoever they face off against, they will beat.
I got to see more before I can address that prediction. I got to know who they're playing. I got to know, is Cam Rising fully healthy going into the game? I got to know how they've played against certain opponents throughout the year, like a Kansas State or, technically Oklahoma State. But again, I don't think Oklahoma State is actually that good. I think they're good. I just don't think they're very good. So, one of the final 4 teams standing. It's possible. You got the quarterback to do it. You got the head coach to do it. Question is whether you've got all the roster pieces you need to get there, and that's what we're going to find out starting on Thursday.
It's incredibly exciting. The season is here. I can't wait to see if Utah can put it all together. And we're all excited for the season. And Spencer, there's this show I always like to tease at the end of my my own show called Locked On College Football. Maybe you could enlighten us a little bit about that.
Yeah, Monday through Friday on YouTube and wherever you get your podcast, the biggest stories in the greatest sport on planet Earth. Everything you need to get ready for the season and keep you informed and engaged throughout the year. It's all over there. And the season is underway. It's already underway. We've already got our first upset. We almost had another one. Times be wild.
Times are absolutely insane. You're going to be very busy this fall with your play-by-play work as well as the podcast. So didn't get a second segment sipping today, but promise we'll do one in the future in your honor, my friend. Thanks again, Spencer.
Appreciate it.
That's going to do it for today's edition of Locked On Utes. Tomorrow, it's finally here. It's game day. We'll be breaking down what we expect to happen between the Utah Utes and Southern Utah Thunderbirds on tomorrow's Locked On Utes.